Hello everyone, my name is Jason Hogan. Now who is Jason Hogan? That's a good question. A question that I've often asked myself many times before. How often do you meet someone that is not afraid to put themselves all the way out there, to share with you the good, the bad, and the ugly, to completely expose themselves before you, and at the end of it all can say to you with humble confidence, "This is who I am." Well, here I am before you and the rest of the world, putting it all out there, telling you my story, sharing with you the real me, the good, the bad, and the bad of it all, in hopes that after you listen to my story and visit my website, you will have a heartwarming sense of who I really am and the feeling that you really know me. So without further ado, I would like to share with you my story. Never in my life did I imagine that I would end up in prison, that I would commit such a crime that would incarcerate me for the better part of my life. When I reflect back, I always find myself asking the questions, how could I do such a thing? How was I even capable of committing such a crime? Even now it's shocking for me to imagine. How did I do that? Why did I do that? It's amazing how a series of choices, how poor decision making can change the course of one's life forever. But I guess that is the lesson about choices. One cannot choose the consequences for them. One cannot decide what the outcome will be. Accountability must take its course, and we as individuals must be willing to accept and endure whatever the outcome may be, however unknown it is. To find myself in this situation was not only a shock to me, but to everyone I know. My family and friends, all those who knew me were dismayed to discover that I had committed a crime. That I had committed such a crime that it was deserving a 190-month prison term. Obviously, this was not the individual whom they knew, loved, and trusted. And seeing their reaction to my decision making, my poor decision making, this was the first time I truly understood and could see the impact my decision had on all those who loved me and cared for me. As a child or adolescent or young adult, rarely does one take their parents seriously when they tell you what you do affects all of us. We think that what we do only affects ourselves, but how untrue and how selfish of me to think otherwise. The impact my decisions have had on my family and loved ones has been paramount. No parent or loved one should have to suffer on account of their loved one's choices. But mine have, to the extent I may never know. And that is a wound I have spent every day since trying to mend. You know, it's funny how even now, after all these years, I still get asked the question, what happened? What happened to you? Why did you do what you did? And I guess that is the million-dollar question, and an appropriate one at that. How does one explain the driving forces in life, the thought, the behavior, the actions that steer one's decisions, or one's direction in life? I'd like to think that I was a good kid, maybe like most kids, feeling a bit misunderstood, but a good kid. I was raised in two great households, loving households with great parents. They taught me right values and timeless and true principles such as responsibility, integrity, honesty, modesty, fairness, and so on. Values such as the importance of family, caring, kindness, hard work, and so forth. My parents worked hard to make sure me and my siblings did not want for anything, and we as a family, we did everything together. They were heavily involved in my school, in sports, and everything that I did. I mean, what more could you ask for? They did the best that they could, and they did a great job. And though they hold themselves accountable for my decision making, my poor decision making, like any good parent would, it is not their fault. They are just as much victims in this situation as the actual victims are. So the question must be asked, how did I end up here? If I was such a good kid and I was raised with such principles and values, how did I end up in prison? What went wrong? How did I go so far astray? And I think that the best way to explain it, or maybe the only way to explain it, is that I was under the influence, but not in the way that you might think. I think that there are many kinds of addictions. Addictions that, if not checked, can control one's behavior. And it would be easy to blame substance abuse or alcohol abuse for this type of behavior. And maybe that would even make sense, since this was so far out of my character that it would be easier to accept that I was high out of my mind. But that was not the case. I was under a different kind of influence. One is equally powerful, but not addressed seriously enough. Although I believe that the bullying epidemic has certainly brought light to its power. What I'm speaking of is the power of influence, of acceptance, the need to fit in or belong. I'm sure many can relate to this. I'm sure that many have felt this kind of pressure at one point or another in their life, if not everyone. Well, this is exactly the type of influence I was under. I was what you call a people pleaser, meaning I would do anything to please others, to please those who I cared for, whether those people were family members or friends, even if I didn't want to or didn't agree with it. You see, the problem with being a people pleaser is I couldn't say no. I couldn't say no to the people who asked me. I couldn't say no because I feared that if I did, I would disappoint them, or I would let them down, or on the other end of the extreme, that they wouldn't like me anymore, or they would abandon me. I did what everyone else wanted to do. I was a follower. I was easily influenced, and I allowed others to think for me, to make decisions for me. Therefore, I became the person that everyone could rely on, could count on, the guy who would always come through, no matter what, even if it was detrimental to myself. And I think that that is the danger of being under this type of influence. Basically, I lived vicariously through the whims and desires of others. And some took advantage of that, some very close to me, simply because they knew I would do anything to please them, because I couldn't say no, and because I wanted to be down. You see, what I didn't realize until it was too late is that in actuality, in order to fit in, to belong, or feel that sense of acceptance, oftentimes you have to compromise yourself, your integrity, your dignity, your values and principles. You have to change what is good and right and pure for what is merely superficial and skin deep, for what is material and momentarily gratifying. How many times have I changed for people in order to belong? And why? The more I changed, the more I lost myself, until one day I woke up in a prison cell lost, with no identity, asking, who am I? Who have I become? I spent my whole life trying to become something that was socially acceptable, and in the process, I lost myself. How miserable is that? Would you consider that selling out? Denying yourself your measures? The very thing that sets you apart from the rest? What makes you unique in order to be ordinary? How vain were my desires. This is what happened to me. I traded my character for personality, for image, for popularity, and I paid for it with my life. At 20 years old, I robbed a bank. Not because I needed to, or wanted to for that matter, or because I thought it would be exciting or cool. I did it because I couldn't say no to an individual whom at the time I looked up to and admired. This decision, this mistake, all of which lasted 120 seconds, would change the course of my life forever. On March 7th, 2000, I was arrested and charged with bank robbery and carjacking, an action that I am ashamed of and regret deeply, and one that I would later plead guilty to and ultimately receive a just sentence of 190 months. That's 15 years, 10 months in federal prison. However, this is not where my story ends. This is where my story begins. I want you to picture in your mind the worst possible environment imaginable. What does it look like to you? Think about that for a while I tell you a story. I want you to imagine a place completely unpredictable and hostile. A place with unspeakable violence, where every day is a battlefield. An environment where assaults of all kinds take place, assaults so horrific that no sane person should have to witness. A place where you must always be on your guard and defend your life and ready to defend your life at all costs. A place where only the strong survive, where the weak become prey and the strong become lords. I want you to imagine a place completely unpredictable and hostile. I've seen things that no one should ever have to see. I've seen things from vicious beatings to stabbings to attempted murders, attempted sexual assaults, suicides, riots, to people becoming hardcore drug addicts just to cope. Now imagine becoming numb to that. Imagine becoming numb to that because it happens every day. It happens so much around you that you become desensitized to it. Now imagine yourself confined to a 78 square foot cell with a toilet and sink that you have to share with another person. Imagine being treated like cattle, herded this way and that, subjected to various kinds of humiliations. And here you are not a human being. You are not someone's son or father, a brother or grandfather. You are not someone's husband or friend. You are just a number. You are nothing but chattels and goods in someone's warehouse. Yes, this is what it is like to be imprisoned. Now I want you to imagine growing up in here. How would you respond to an environment like this? Now I want you to imagine having to spend the rest of your life in this environment for a crime in which you did not commit, for a crime in which you were actually innocent. That doesn't even sound conceivable, does it? To think that you could actually go to prison for something that you did not do. Just the notion of that idea is preposterous. But I can assure you that it happens. And it happens more than one might think or consider. Because that very inconceivable notion happened to me. And while there may be some skepticism concerning such an assertion, I can say with certainty that not only is it possible, it's probable. And though that may be uneasy to accept, I encourage you to try. I was 20 years old when I went to prison. 20 years old. Before, I was never in really any kind of trouble. When I was arrested for bank robbery in March 2000, I was scared to death. I had no clue what to expect from the system. All I knew was that I was caught red-handed and I was guilty. There was nothing left for me to do other than own my mistake and accept responsibility for my role in that crime and hope and pray that the judge would show leniency on me since this was my first offense. My knees buckled when I received a federal prison term of 190 months. I thought to myself, my life is over, as I try to calculate the months into years. This was just the tip of the iceberg, though. The beginning of the enormous difficulty and trial that was laying in store for me. There was no way to prepare myself for what was about to happen next. Shortly after my arrest for bank robbery, within 6 days in fact, I was called to the booking office and I was charged with another crime. A robbery kidnapping, a crime in which I was and am actually innocent. I became hysterical, panicked, emphatically expressing my innocence with the officer. I kept asking, how is this possible? How can this even happen? I didn't do it. I don't understand. Words I'm sure the officer heard 1,000,000 times before. In my mind, I understood about the bank robbery. That made sense. I did that. I committed that crime. But I didn't do this. So how could I be charged for something I didn't do? I didn't even want to let the officer fingerprint me or take my picture. He attempted several times to calm me down and reassure me that if I was innocent, then it would be proven in the investigation. I wanted to believe him so badly. And my naivety in the system wanted to believe that he was right, that just as the system would prove that I was guilty of the bank robbery, the system would also prove that I was actually innocent of these false allegations. But he was wrong, and I was wrong to believe that the system actually works. To my amazement, a jury would later find me guilty for a crime in which no physical evidence existed, and without any preponderance of evidence to even prove that I was factually guilty. There was no investigation conducted in this case, and no facts gathered to substantiate guilt. Had there been an investigation and evidence collected at the scene of the crime, it would prove that I am actually innocent. However, this did not happen. The real perpetrator was in the victim's vehicle for 25 minutes, handled her ID, touched various places inside of her vehicle, yet investigators never sweat for fingerprints, never sweat for DNA, hair samples, all exonerating evidence that would prove I'm actually innocent. The victim stated that she did not get a good look at the perpetrator's face, but observed that he had a tattoo of a black sun on the back of his left hand. On the back of his left hand, with some writing underneath it. She drew a picture of it on her police report. I have no tattoos on my hands. Therefore, clearly, I do not fit the description of the real perpetrator. Once again, demonstrating my actual innocence. So given these circumstances, and the blatant and grave negligence by police detectives, failing to meet even the most basic protocol and standard of gathering evidence to pursue any suspect, my question is, how is a conviction possible without any supporting evidence, without any actual facts? It's not possible, or could not be possible, and therefore the only alternative to factually guilty is actually innocent. This is a major flaw in the justice system, a flaw that cannot go unchecked or uncorrected any further. The system should not be able to prosecute anyone without facts, without sound supporting evidence. And the fact that it does is a crime in itself. I was not made a suspect because probable cause existed. I was made a suspect because I was already in the system. I was already in custody. A theory that if I did that over there, that is the bank robbery, if I committed that bank robbery over there, then I could have also done this other robbery over here. And herein lies the problem. Theories do not produce a perpetrator. Investigative facts do. To prosecute me without any actual facts and supporting evidence is not only malicious, but villainizing, completely contradicting the purpose and objective the justice system is designed to uphold. Will anyone do? Is that the message being sent here? I have been convicted for a crime in which I am actually innocent. I have been sentenced to 77 years for that crime, a term of imprisonment to run consecutive to my already 190 months, to bring the total to 93 years. My entire life has been stolen from me, and not because facts or evidence proved it, but because of theory. So given these circumstances, these extreme circumstances, imagine being 20 years old, young, impressionable, easily influenced, and immature. How do you not become a product of this environment? How do you not become the animal you are expected to be? How do you rise above the madness when there is no incentive to do so? How do you be here but not be of here? Well, I think that's the uniqueness of my story. While I have seen countless of people come into the system, it's few and far in between that one does not become a product of it. I am one of those few and far in between people. I have not let my circumstances dictate or direct my behavior, and I have not let this environment define, mold, or shape my character. I have purposely chosen not to fit in, not to be accepted, not to belong. Instead, I have chosen to take a proactive approach to this experience, to act rather than be acted upon. I have chosen to take responsibility for myself, for my life, and to utilize this extreme difficulty as an opportunity to examine and explore myself, to identify the errors in my thinking, the flaws in my character, and the sources or causes of those flaws, and correct them. I have dedicated my time and life to the improvement of self, redefining myself, centering myself upon timeless and true principles, and aligning my values with those principles. I have discovered the true meaning of life and the things that are of true importance and value. I have chosen to not become a victim of this system, but rather take the initiative for my life, empowering myself with the necessary knowledge, tools, and resources that will help me to make better, more informed decisions in the future and keep me from making the same mistakes I have made in the past. I have actively participated in numerous classes and programs that are directed towards self-improvement and awareness. Not only have I participated in these programs, but I have also had the pleasure of writing courses for them, as well as facilitating these programs. Not only that, I have been actively contributing to my community as well, empowering others outside of the prison system, outside of these walls and fences, by providing resource material to help others deal and cope with the struggles and difficulties in life using my own experiences. I have even written and proposed programs to educate our at-risk youth, to mentor them in hopes that my experience can make a difference and deter them from following a path that would lead them into prison. And in addition to this, I have chosen to continue my own education and started on my degree in healthcare management. I have completed the signature program of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I have also completed vocational training in building trades, amongst several other programs. Now, I mention these achievements, accomplishments, and contributions because despite my present circumstances, and without incentive, I have chosen to rise to my potential, to be a positive, motivating force, standing upright and on my own in the midst of chaos. Now, at the age and mentality I was when I came in the system, being a follower and one easily influenced, I should be filled with all the corruption and filth and crap that this environment breeds. But instead, I have chosen to cultivate inside of me the type of individual and character that is beyond reproach. The type of individual that you should want to manage your business, be your best friend, marry your daughter, have as your neighbor. The point I am making is that I do not belong in prison. I have served my time and paid my debt to society for the crime that I did commit. And to continue to keep me incarcerated is a crime in itself. I deserve a second chance at life, an opportunity I have not yet been afforded. Because at 20 years old, as the judge passed his unreasonable, unjust, and unfitting sentence of 77 years to be run consecutive to any and all other sentences, I was told that I am not fit to be in society again, that the message that was sent to me was that I could not be rehabilitated, that I was uncorrectable. Well, I am here before you today saying, showing, and proving that theory is wrong. Therefore, I challenge the DOJ, the Department of Justice, that if federal corrections and the Department of Corrections is really about that word, corrections, then prove it. Because here I am, providing all the proof and evidence showing that I am corrected, that the system can work. How much more time then is needed, is necessary, if the sole purpose for me to be incarcerated is to correct my behavior? But if it is not about corrections, and what I have to say here doesn't matter and doesn't mean anything, then remove and replace corrections with what it really is. The department of warehousing humans in suspended animation with an outdate of next to never. Please prove me wrong. Please prove that that's not what this system is designed for. A very special and important person in my life once told me, way too often people search for answers where the light is brightest. But sometimes, in order to find the answers you're looking for, you have to go where it's dark. This is the benefit and lesson of my experience. I had to go to prison to discover myself, to find the strength and enlightenment to stand on my own, to find the answers to my life, and to decide who I'm going to be, who I really am. There are always two paths. And what I've learned from my time incarcerated is that it is not my image, my status amongst people, or popularity that defines me. It is how I choose to rise after I've fallen that defines me. This is who I am. This is my character. So what say you? Thank you for listening to my story.